Welcome back to a Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes, and today I'm delighted to be joined by Sean Conley. How are you doing, Sean?
Good, yeah. It's quite dark here late at night in Western Australia, but our time difference is actually narrowed, so we're only on a 7-hour delay now.
7-hour delay, and you're coming from Australia, of course. You are part of the Celtic Down Under team. Tell us a wee bit about the show, because that's been expanding recently, hasn't it?
Yeah, we've been getting quite a lot of traction now. We've got Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday shows now. The Monday one is timed so that it starts just as you guys are finishing, and the Tuesday and Wednesday ones would be on before you guys start. So Monday is really kind of deep focus on whatever the game is at the weekend, and Tuesday and Wednesday can get a bit more broad. Tuesday looking a bit like the history and culture of the club. Wednesday can be anything, like homegrown players or, like gambling sponsorship, that sort of thing.
Oh, definitely. If there's anything you want to discuss in the comment section, thanks everybody for getting involved, then ask the question, spark up a debate. We've got loads of discussion points here, but obviously if there's anything that you really want to talk about on a Celtic State of Mind, then let us know, and Sean and I will discuss that. Now, since Sean was last on the show, there's plenty for us to chat about. I'm going to start off with all the good stuff, the positivity around that first half performance against Kilmarnock. Sean, for you, was it the best 45 minutes we've seen under Ange Postecoglou?
It was different. I think because it was a kind of new system, I think to say it was the best is almost comparing apples and pears. Cricket. I was going to say apples and oranges, but it's not really apples and oranges, but it's comparing apples and pears. It was very good, very effective system, and it feels like it's ramping up towards playing with that kind of system in Europe next year, and potentially the semi-final next week as well. So I feel like I'm not sure Hatate is going to get back in the team before the semi-final. I think that's what we're trying to bed in that system at the moment.
Yeah, I mean that is something that we were talking yesterday with John Hughes. John posed the question around pick a three, pick the trio in the midfield. And obviously that sparks the discussion. He ran a poll on his socials and it was very interesting. My own midfield came third in the poll, but I think there is definitely that recency bias, whereas Iwata was in a lot of people's forefront of their minds, Sean. So he was getting into a lot of the teams. But if you had asked the question 4 weeks ago, Moy would have been in a lot of people's teams.
Yeah,
I mean, I said O'Reilly. I would go with O'Reilly across what I've seen since he came to the club. And that includes this season. I mean, he's been getting some stick. We'll talk about him. But, I think in terms of a midfield three, he would definitely be in mine. We called the Kilmarnock performance a 27-minute masterclass. It was a goal blitz. Some of the football was sensational. It looked at one point like we might get to that fabled double figures. I mean, when you score 4 goals and miss a penalty in 27 minutes, Sean, are we just being greedy? I mean, we're not going. I don't think we're going to get there post-split.
No, because the foot will come off the gas a bit. Players that are injured will take time off, go for surgery, whatever they need to do. It happens every single time. I think the only time we really had, I think we had a couple of good performances after the league was won under Martin O'Neill when they brought the kids in.
That's
so
right.
The kids were up for it, and we had like Sean Maloney and Simon Lynch fighting over a penalty. But apart from that, the drive and hunger kind of goes out a wee bit. And it's just natural. You can't really do much about it, can you? But we're going to, we're on 102 goals now. The record's 106. It'd be nice to get that this weekend.
The thing is, we are going to be breaking records. Talking about trebles, for example. There's a record to be set if we're able to get the full domestic clean sweep. I've got the tagline running. Ange flicked the switch on Celtic Reset. Now he looks unstoppable, and he's done all of that in a very, very short space of time. Really, in the great scheme of things, Sean, I mean, we used to talk about a culture, having to change the culture at Celtic, and this was in the final season under Neil Lennon, because we felt at that point that we did need a reset. So to come in and not only instill a culture at a football club that, should have been there, but it wasn't, it was lacking. Also give the kind of self-belief in the players that were already there, reinvigorate the careers of others and then rebuild with the recruitment. So there's so much happening, so much plates being spun, all by one guy, and he'd done it. And I keep saying it, all by himself, really. And what I mean by that is he was on his own when he came over. He obviously had a team behind him, and he started slowly building and moulding that team himself as well. But we've got this guy who's in the Scottish game doing wonders for Celtic, but also for the Scottish game. You look at the exposure that we're getting over in Australia, for example, over in Japan, because obviously he managed it, he's brought players from there. And the whole thing for me has gone up a level, yet all we seem to see on a day-to-day basis in Scotland is good headlines for Rangers, bad headlines for Celtic. And the bad headlines are normally Ange is leaving, or Matt O'Reilly's leaving, or somebody's leaving. And it's all bad, and I think people might say, well, just ignore it. I think it needs to be called out, Sean. I think that if you've got a platform, and over all the different platforms we go out on, so we're out on Twitter, YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, etc., and we also have all the audio platforms that we go out on. We're listened to and watched by 1.2 million people in a month. So in terms of a narrative, which is the most overused word in Scottish football, especially in fan media, in terms of a narrative, if it's being skewed, you've got to call it out. And then I think the narrative can be formed within alternative media. I mean, because if you don't call it out, no one else will.
Yeah, and that £112 million valuation that they came up with for Sevco was just the most idiotic thing I've ever seen in my life. It's like, well, here's a number and here's another number. Let's just times them together and see what we get. I'd be curious to see what that value would come out for Celtic if you did that number of shares times share value. I don't even know if it'd be more or less, but the point is it's a nonsensical kind of metric. To go back a little bit on what you said about Ange hitting the reset switch, we were talking about the culture. We've had times in the past where managers have come in and reset a culture. Ronnie Deila did it and enjoyed some good success in his first year. Mm-hmm. Even Neil Lennon did it when he took over from Tony Mowbray. He had a real reset on the culture and attitude. Yeah. See Barry Robson doing it at Aberdeen just now. But I think the third thing you said there was the real key difference is what Postecoglou is doing different is he's churning players. Because what we've always had in the past is managers staying loyal to players, holding on to them for too long. And we got to that point. And if you look through the historical records, like there was always like 3 in a row, and then it would go like Sevco would win 3 in a row, Rangers as they were. It was win 3 in a row, Celtic would win 3 in a row, and it'd be this kind of 3-year cycle. And if you're not refreshing the playing squad, that's kind of inevitably what happens. And at the time, I was always thinking to myself, why are we doing this? Like, look at all the teams that dominate for a sustained period of time. Liverpool in the 80s, you couldn't believe the players that were being sold. Man United in the 90s and 2000s. Ferguson just getting rid of Jaap Stam and the likes, David Beckham. Even Real Madrid now, still doing it. When they sold Casemiro, everyone's like, what? Like, they couldn't believe the player Varane. Like, that's how you have to. You can't have sentiment in your team. You have to keep it fresh. You have to keep new faces coming in. Yeah,
without a doubt. And the examples you used are proof of that. You've always got to be looking to the next right back, the next centre forward. And I think Ange does that brilliantly. We've been, like you say, I think we've been guilty of it in the past. That succession planning simply has not been there. And it is interesting when you look at the league titles won. You did have that run of 2 or 3, and then it was split, and then it was winning it back. And yeah, let's give credit to some of the gaffers who have done it. I think Neil Lennon undoubtedly done that when Tony Mowbray left the position. Brendan Rodgers done it. Ronnie Deila done it. I think if Ronnie was a stronger character, then he would have got more success out of it, because there was a lot of resistance to the changes he was making when he came in. And what you've got with Ange is you've got that power of his personality to see it through as well. I'm really keen to get the thoughts, the comments, the opinions of all the viewers, as many as possible today. Please, if you're watching the video, this makes a massive, massive difference to us on YouTube. Give us a thumbs up on the video as well. And if you want to comment, subscribe to the channel. It's the only way, because that's the only way we can kind of control the commenters. And if you see anyone who's lurking and not for the betterment of the Acsom community, give us a shout, and we can do something about that as well. Jungle Lion, another day, and all the good news stories about that mob, yet again, pathetic at this stage. And that's what we're talking about. But again, I think in the past, you had to kind of suffer it. And once a month through the door would come the Not the View, because I used to subscribe to it, Sean, and it would come through the door. And only then would you have because you didn't even get that in the Celtic View, the fans' opinions appeared in the pages of fanzines that would be photocopied up, printed up, sent through the door, picked up outside the games. And now you've got that instant ability just to go online and discuss it with fellow Celtic fans. So it is important to continually bring it up. Paddy Lavery, welcome back. Afternoon, all the sun is shining in the Doyne. Well, hopefully the sun is shining in Dalkeith as well, Paddy. But here's a big shout out to On the Volley. Get that checked out as well. That's another channel on YouTube. And you will be able to see Shah, who's on the right of Paddy's avatar there. He's the presenter, and Paddy was on the show. Giving Acsom a big shout out just the other week there, so thank you for that, my friend. We've got David O'Rourke, who is giving a shout out to the Harrow Shamrock CSC. What is your CSC? Let us know, and we'll give you a shout out as well. We're going to be looking ahead because we're on Thursday already, and the games are coming in thick and fast, Sean. Look ahead to the Motherwell game at the weekend, and sometimes you get to the point, and I think this is fine as a football fan to get confident in your team, to start looking ahead even beyond the next game. I know football players and managers don't do that. We can do it. But with the Rangers game in mind, what will Ange do? What do we know about Ange in terms of his team selection? What is he going to do with the likes of Awata over Moy, Kobayashi over Carter Vickers? We've not spoken about his injury yet. Haksabanovic potentially over Jota. Any other changes? Do you think he will do that? It was a bit of a surprise to see the selection against Kelly. Is he going to do the same again against Motherwell, do you think?
I don't. I think the midfield three will stay the same. I don't see that, barring injury or suspension, I don't see that changing between now and the start of the semi-final. I think that will be the same three for Motherwell and the same three for the semi. The defence is different though. I think Carter Vickers comes back in this weekend, shakes off any rust. I think he had a suspension hanging over him as well if he'd got booked at the weekend. So that was there might have been another reason why he was out. But if he gets booked this weekend, there's a 2-week delay on any suspension for a yellow card, so it doesn't matter. He'd be fine for the semi. So he'll come back in, shake off any rust on the knee, play in the semi, and then probably go for an operation after that, based on the stories we've heard. Haksabanovic will probably be back out the team. Jota will be back in. It's a shame because Haksabanovic, I didn't talk about him like on our pod. I didn't even mention his name, didn't get to him. And he was just kind of quietly efficient. He wasn't really doing anything that stood him out. He was taking the ball well, passing it well, like he was doing good triangles, but he's not the sort of man that's going to take on a player. Doesn't do the fancy things like Jota, doesn't torch someone for pace like Maeda, and he doesn't really score goals unless he's on the left. So it's an interesting one. I don't see him starting again. I think we'll be back to the Maeda, Jota, and Kyogo front three.
Yeah, that's the strongest in my mind. And I think that Haksabanovic is a player we've spoken about a lot in here, Sean, whereby I think there's something under the surface and we've not quite seen yet. We've seen some flashes from Haksabanovic, and eventually he gets his start. And you're glad he gets his start. I certainly was against Kilmarnock. Give Jota a rest, play Haksabanovic, albeit probably not in his favoured position on the right-hand side. But like you say, when you've got a guy like Maeda on the left, who's going to give you something completely different, you can understand why Haksabanovic is over there. A feature of many of Ange's signings, though, is that you can't be fixed to one position. You have got to be adaptable. And if you get a game out right, you've got to make an impression, or like you say, you're going to drop back out. And I think a lot of the players, other than potentially Giakoumakis and maybe even O, could adapt to go left, right. You look at the adaptability of Matt O'Reilly in the European games this season. And if you've got 2 or 3 options within your positional ability, you're going to be a much bigger asset for Ange Postecoglou. That might actually harm Haksabanovic a wee bit. There's been suggestions that he's probably a better 10. Have you seen signs of that? Would you maybe try and play him as a number 10?
I think he's got it, but I don't think he is naturally, to be honest. Or not the kind of 10 that I like. Maybe a more traditional kind of second striker, like a Carlos Tevez type. He's that kind of mold rather than not like a Zidane or a Pirlo. Not like someone that would sit in that hole. Yeah, I get what people say when they're saying that, because he is very tidy in possession. He does have a great weight of pass. He can see things well. Yeah, I think he's more of an attacking player than that. Yeah, and it's a strange one that Maeda, like what you're saying about the two positions there, like, yeah, and it just kind of triggered in my head, like Hatate, yeah, sure, he's played left back this season as well as centre mid. You've got Bernabe came on at the wing last week against Sevco. And the funny thing is it was only a few weeks ago Hatate was dropped. Do you know what I mean? And now we're like, and then he was shouted player of the season. Now he's injured, and we're saying he's not getting back in the team again. It's just, and Matt O'Reilly can get a game for 2-3 months, can get a start, and now he's seems to be undroppable somehow. Same Adam Moy. Like these, it just comes in these really weird cycles where, in the past, like Alan Thompson would be injured, straight back in, you know, like that sort of thing.
Yeah,
that just doesn't happen now. We've just got, okay, it's your jersey, keep doing it.
Yeah, you're right. And I think that there will come a point as well, Sean, because very unusual. It would be very unusual for every single player in a side to peak all at the same time. If that was to happen in an Ange team, then it's going to be frightening. And big shout out to Keith Oakton. You are in a very warm and sunny Plymouth. I'm going to have a look outside the studio, you know, Sean. I've not even seen outside since I got here this morning to see if the weather's okay. I've got a drive through to Glasgow as soon as we're finished here. So hopefully there's a bit of sunshine, puts a smile on your face. Michael, again, a big hi from the boys and girls in Newcastle, County Down. It's always great to hear where you are watching from. Listen, even if you don't have a G postcode, you can tune into Acsom and be a Celtic fan, and that's what we love to see. That was a wee dig. Somebody last week, Sean, said that guys like me who don't live in Glasgow shouldn't support Celtic. Nonsense. Tobago Street Police Station, Celtic Supporters Club. See, there's CSCs everywhere. You think the best 45 was against Rangers, Hatate and Ibarra. Yeah. Absolutely up there. Absolutely up there. And the atmosphere that night as well was tremendous. And bizarrely enough, we took at least one, maybe two people for their first Celtic v Rangers experience that night. And I remember saying to them after the game, listen, don't get your hopes up. Football's not like this all the time, but this was some introduction to what it can be like. Danielle points out, and we will talk about this, Danielle. Actually, why not talk about it right now because you brought it up? Massive congratulations to the girls last night. They won 6-0 and took themselves only 2 points behind Glasgow City at the top. Could the men's and women's team clean up the league titles? Well, let's hope so. Celtic have never won a title in the women's league, and I think that when you look at the growth globally in the women's game, Sean, it's phenomenal that we're seeing it in Scottish football as well. We've got a number of professional clubs now. Celtic were not professional until I think it was 2 or 3 years ago. Someone might be able to correct me on that. And we started covering the games actually during the pandemic. And it was great. We actually covered match day games as well. And there's a few members of our team who are big supporters of the women's game, like Natasha Meikle, like Colin Watt. And Natasha was at the game again last night watching Celtic's women's team absolutely dismantle Hearts 6-0. Fran Alonso obviously was in the news for all the wrong reasons recently, Sean, having been assaulted on the sidelines during a draw against Rangers. But Celtic had just beat Glasgow City and they followed that up with a resounding victory. Meanwhile, Rangers beat Glasgow City 2-1 last night, and there's 2 points in it. So we're 2 points behind Glasgow City, and Rangers are a point behind Celtic. It definitely is on.
We're playing Glasgow City in the Cup this weekend as well.
Yeah, it's one of these things, Sean, that it's not a new phenomenon. Women's football is not a new phenomenon, but it's great and refreshing in the last couple of years, certainly. It's getting more of a focus in Scottish football. And we can talk about it. We've become familiar with the players. Fran Alonso is a charismatic kind of coach. And it would be fantastic to see them winning this. I would love to see more games at Celtic Park, though.
Yeah, definitely. Or even if they revamped Barrowfield that they were talking about, I'd actually prefer that, to be honest, like to have like a dedicated venue where it's smaller and you're not like kind of lost in the stadium. Do you know what I mean? Like you can kind of feel like you're like in a hollow place if there's too many empty seats. But if you could have something more kind of tighter and intimate, that'd be better. I don't actually like Airdrie. I've been there a few times for games and you've seen Airdrie. No offense to anyone that's listening from Airdrie, but it's not, the stadium's not changed in quite some time, and I don't like playing on the plastic. But imagine if you could get like a game, like say on a Saturday, you go up midday, you go along to Barrowfield, watch the ladies or the B team, whoever's home that weekend, and you just walk along to Celtic Park and for the 3 o'clock game. Do you know what I mean? Like, great day out.
No, you're right, and there's so much that has to be done to continue with that level of exposure. And then what happens is, if there's a success in the Champions League, for example, then the exposure goes up again. And I think it's all about, we are always trying to build the brand of Celtic Football Club, but a part of that now is the B team, it is the women's team, and it's great that they are getting coverage. Hopefully we'll get more live games on the TV as well, and if you are able to try and maybe incorporate the season ticket so that it allows you to go to the games, I think that would be a good idea. We've been talking about some of the players who are hot at this moment in time, like you say, undroppable, and in 2 or 3 weeks that discussion might be completely different. But what we have seen in recent weeks, Sean, is Iwata getting some game time. And again, as I say, he's at the forefront of our mind at the moment, so much so that a lot of the people in that poll that John ran would have picked Iwata over Moy, and which is bizarre because Moy a few weeks ago was a first pick. With, again, the Rangers game in mind, what are you going to do there? I mean, is Moy a player that you think to yourself, he wasn't great against Rangers in the last game? He wasn't brilliant, right? And, a great Aaron Moy is a huge asset to Celtic in a massive game like this. However, I don't think Iwata's put a foot wrong.
Yeah, I think you're being very generous by saying he wasn't great. Quite euphemistic there. But yeah, look, if you think back to the cup final, the 2-1 game, Moy is crucial in the build-up to both goals, but then he's culpable for the concession of the goal that Morelos scores. So, and I remember saying at the time, like, O'Reilly defends that if he's in the team ahead of Moy, because O'Reilly is underrated at his set piece defense. But we're talking about Iwata being in there, and I think, what we're up against here, Todd Cantwell, who is like, I hope he plays every game against us for as long as he can, because he was an empty jersey in the last game. Raskin looked decent enough, but Todd Cantwell was absolutely awful. Like, I don't know how he's getting the man of the match in every game for them, but he was terrible when he played against us. Maybe he just had a bad day, but like, I didn't see it. I didn't see what they were seeing, and I'm not afraid of it. And I think Iwata will absolutely own him.
Is it the Bull he's been getting called? Because he has some presence about him physically, doesn't he?
Well, surely the nickname should be like Glass, or the one I've seen online was Holy Wata. But yeah, what should it be on? Well, Marelli's called him Tank, so Tank Iwata is not as bad, not that bad either.
Tank's good, but yeah, I remember. I mean, Vata came on as well, and I know that his dad and him are called Big Holy and Wee Holy by members of the family. So yes, yes, absolutely. If we sign someone up top and play Vata out right, we could have a forward line of Lee Vata. Is there a player out there called Lee? Could be a wee Chinese import perhaps, and then we could have a proper forward line of Oli Vata. But Jamie, 7121, hail from New Zealand, heading towards midnight over in New Zealand. Thanks for tuning in, every single one of you. We're 600 strong on a live stream, and it's absolutely great to welcome you all in. I was speaking just last week about what happened during the pandemic and how we went live on the stream, and obviously a lot of people did that, Sean, because we wanted news, we wanted that community spirit, we wanted to engage with people, either as part of the show or as an audience member and a commenter. And I said one of the most important parts of that is the fact that a community was very quickly built up within the comment section. You see people coming in and they become known by name or by avatar, not only by us presenting the show, but also by the fellow commenters. And it's so important to ensure that that's something that we keep up, that community spirit, because you've got to remember, not only are people coming from all over the globe, they're coming from all kind of areas of society, and sometimes that bit of engagement might be about the only engagement they get in a day. So don't ever forget that, and let's keep it as it is, because we've got a very healthy community within the Acsom team. You mentioned Carter Vickers and a wee bit of rustiness. It was confirmed during the week there that we're managing, or he is managing, an injury at this moment in time. Hatati's out injured. Abada has been out for a few weeks as well. But even so, and the fact that Jota was rested, even though those four, top players were missing from the side, we had the strength of depth, didn't we, Sean? And that's something, again, we were talking about a game. Kevin and I were talking about a game last night. We went live last night on Stream of Celica, and we were talking about a game that we played against Utrecht, and it was when we dropped down to the UEFA Cup under Joseph Englos. And you looked at the bench and you had like 17 and 18-year-old kids on the bench. The depth of the squad simply wasn't there. It's something I also think, when you look at that great Martin O'Neill side, we didn't have that depth. The depth we've got now is phenomenal. And I think also, when you look at the dozen loanees, and I don't know how many are going to come back as Celtic players, I reckon maybe 2 or 3, get rid of the rest, and flip that into 2 or 3 very, very good quality signings. And then that depth gets better, because all those dozen players that are not here are obviously not contributing, but they're all, if you add in the accumulation of their wages, it's a massive hit every single week that Celtic will be taking. You turn that into 3 or 4 decent signings, and we continue with that constant pressure on whoever's got the jersey, and that's a good thing.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, man, it's when you're mentioning the depth in the Martin O'Neill era, the first thing that popped into my head was when David Fernandez got subbed on and subbed off in that game. I think it was, I don't remember who he was playing, Motherwell, Livingston. Other players that were coming off the bench were like Ulrich Lawson. Do you know what I mean? Like
Momo Silla. Yep.
Exactly. Yeah. We're relying on Momo Silla to score last minute goals against FC Bao. Do you know what I mean? Like that was kind of where we were at that time. Was we had all this investment in the salaries of the big earners, and then it was just what's the best we can get from the SPL at that point. After that, and I think, and look, I don't think we're in the position we're in. And this is going to sound really ridiculous, but I think Brexit has put us in this position where we can actually, we could not have signed Iwata or Kyogo a few years ago before Brexit. They would not have passed the work permit rules. So I think you can maybe argue there's a slight advantage to Postecoglou in that sense, that his market is broader than it has been for past Celtic managers. But either way, however we've got here, we're here, and it's uncharted, really. It's like almost like going back to the 70s when you had the Quality Street gang coming in to replace the Lisbon Lions. It's that kind of quality and depth. Oh,
you're talking my language if you bring up the Quality Street gang. It's it's an era of Celtic history that I'm very, very fond of. JR is asking where JP is. Well, JP this week and last week has been busy elsewhere. So JP will be back on the show ASAP. He's much missed every time he is not on a Celtic State of Mind. So big shout out to JP if he's tuning in, because I'm sure he will be at some point over the next 48 hours or so. And the other player I wanted to talk about is someone we hadn't seen a great deal of, but I think he has impressed. I don't know how much of a challenge he's had, is Kobayashi. Obviously, when he comes into the side, you're keen to see the style he play. You're keen also to see Starfelt maybe playing in his favoured right-hand side of the centre-half position. And he did look very composed, very calm, good range of passing. And I think that there was 1 or 2 occasions where you're looking at him thinking to yourself, right, you still lack that wee bit of sharpness, but that's understandable. But he does look as though he's been a great acquisition, and he could be another one of the players just under the surface of that first team, Sean, that when required can step in and do the business like he did against Kilmarnock.
He's still not there yet, but he's clearly got a lot of great attributes. He's still not up to speed with the system yet. He's not as aggressive attacking it as Starfelt and Carter Vickers are, but that was a problem that they two had at first as well, particularly Starfelt. It took him at least 6 months to get up to that. So I'm not putting that on Kobayashi. I mean, if you look at the Kilmarnock game at the weekend, when the Kilmarnock player goes around Joe Hart and Kobayashi's on the line, like, you never see that. You never see Starfelt or Carter Vickers backtracking in that. They're always aggressively attacking. But that being said, he's looked great. He's looked composed. He's got strength and assurance, and there's a certain other team in Glasgow that would probably bite your hand off for that left centre back right now after their last 2 games. And the one we luckily missed out on, Ben Davies, who literally got hooked against St Mirren at the weekend and who was shocking at Celtic Park. So it's a night and day comparison there. We were going for Ben Davies, 3 or 4 allegedly, 3 or 4 transfer windows in a row. Missed out on him when he went to Liverpool, and now we've got someone. Ben Davies is looking like an absolute charlatan, and we've got someone that looks so much better, even though he's not quite up to speed with the system yet.
Yeah, listen, you're right to bring up Davies, because obviously Celtic as a club will be offered a hell of a lot of players. There'll be loads and loads of candidates on recruitment lists, etc. And you're right, we've absolutely dodged a bullet on that one from what I've seen. Now, I'm going to bring this in. This is Div Milan. Gers think we're going to regress. They're dreaming of Ange leaving. Saw Gers podcast and a few were wanting Ange to get to. Well, I've got to say, Div, I genuinely don't tune into any Rangers shows, podcasts. So fair play if you do, but that's not something that I do. However, yeah, it would not surprise me if they did want Ange to leave, but it's the media that annoys me a wee bit more, because I would expect that from a Rangers fan looking at Ange Postecoglou thinking, right, he's a titan. I don't want him to stay at Celtic because they're just getting stronger and stronger. They are hoping for a regression. If you get a manager telling a fan base that they're going to get 4 or 5 players to equal Celtic, then I would question, the levels of delusion in that, because they're basically saying that you guys stand still. We bring in 5 high caliber players who all have to hit the ground running, and we'll match you. And it's like, no problem. Okay, we'll just stand still while you do that. That's not how football works. And you're just kind of ignoring the fact that come the summer, you're going to be depleted yourself as a football team. So you're going to have to replace them as well as the 4 or 5 that you think you are behind Celtic. So there's levels of delusion. They will be dreaming of Ange leaving. But, what I would suggest is that, the way Celtic have approached this is we look after Celtic, Sean. You've got to look after what you're doing yourself. Stop looking over your shoulder at what other people are doing. And I think that has worked well for Ange and Celtic.
And, yeah, I know Mickey Beale is an absolute mouthpiece, but I read like a paragraph of what he was supposed to have said, and it seemed like he actually said they want 4 or 5 players to be where they want to be, and he didn't actually mention Celtic this time. So I don't know, I might be wrong. He might have said it in a different line of the actual interview. But if what I'm reading is the actual quote that they're using, then it feels like the media has actually paraphrased that one into a Celtic comparison. But regardless, you're right. 4 or 5 players, if they think that's going to get them to where they want to be, which is obviously top of the league, then they really do need us to regress. They would need Ange to go. They would need 3 or 4 of our best players to get sold, and for us to not do a good job of replacing those losses. I don't know what the odds of something like that happening would be. It feels small. It feels like we're gearing up for Champions League next year and no one's going anywhere. No one of import.
No, you're spot on. And then you've got that confidence as well that if it was to happen, then we would have replacements either already in the building, Sean, or on the radar. And I think it's happened twice since Ange came in, because you go back to Rogic and Beaton, 2 guys who were staple members of the first season under Ange Postecoglou. And then in the second season, we've seen it was Juranovic and Giakoumakis. Yet they leave, and the thing just keeps going. The machine keeps rolling on, and we never stop. That whole cliche, but it's true. And I think that when the time comes, unless it was somebody like Callum McGregor, Carter Vickers or Jota, I would be very, very confident that we'll be able to bring someone else in. I don't like seeing quality leave Celtic. I say it time and time again, but I would be confident that Postecoglou and his recruitment team would have something in place. It wouldn't come as a shock. It wouldn't leave us short. Ed Janzio, the culture of the club at present is something to be proud of as a supporter, from the way the media is handled to the conduct of our players. It is a club that represents us. What did you make of that video that went viral during the week, Sean, with the Arsenal players and the wee mascot? Obviously, Arsenal have put it out thinking, oh, look at our players signing this jersey. And it turned into a PR disaster. What did you make of that?
I didn't catch the disaster part. I did see the video. What was the blowback on it?
The blowback basically was, look at these spoilt footballers. Not one of them would break breath to the poor wee lassie. Look at her looking up longingly at her heroes, and they're just signing the jersey and walking on. So there was loads and loads of kind of like fallout from it. And then other clubs started posting videos of how it should be done and all this kind of stuff. And I was watching it thinking to myself, right, the wee girl for me looked pretty starstruck, but you would expect at least one or two of the players, Kieran Tierney, for example, to have a bit of crack with them. Say hello. Who's your favourite player? Blah, blah, blah. I don't know. Had that already happened? Was it to happen afterwards? Are the players told not to do certain things? I'm not too sure. But I am pretty confident in the way that we conduct ourselves as a football club. The engagement with fans, we used to bang on about that during the early kind of Acsom live streams, that the lack of engagement was a real concern. I don't feel that anymore at this moment in time, Sean.
Well, you're saying that, but we've just recently enacted a ban on players stopping at Lennoxtown to engage with fans. So I'm not sure, like, objectively, if that's the case or not. I think I've listened to a few shows where you guys have been talking about, like, what was your man that sings "The Fields of Athenry" as his party piece at Celtic Supporters Club? I don't remember. Anyway, but the point is, like, it used to be that the underbelly.
Oh, Chris Morris. Chris Morris. Yes.
So we're regularly getting sent out to CSCs, and I don't think that's happening anymore. At our CSC last week, we had Dixie Deans in, and he just comes down just to watch the game, to be honest. He's not there to represent the club, but it's good, you know. We've had John Hartson come, Scott McDonald, but mostly it's, I'm not... Do you think that they are, or do you think we're just doing it via social media and we're not actually engaging in person?
Well, the CSC one is a great shout, Sean, because I don't think that that's something that is done enough of. And what's happened is it's created a situation whereby, on the one hand, certain people at the club don't want you to do events with CSCs because they see that the money is going elsewhere. But on the other hand, the clubs aren't doing anything with the CSCs in relation to that. So there's some good things. Big John gave us a great example yesterday where Ange and Callum McGregor sent personal messages to John and his family for the wedding last week. That's brilliant. That's superb. And they're not doing it because John never shared the footage. They're not doing it to look good. They know it's a very private thing. But on the other hand, the CSCs, I think, often, being involved in live events as Acsom is, CSCs come to you quite often saying, can you get us an ex-player? Because there's no chance of getting a current player. So yeah, there is that whole aspect of it that I think it's fair to raise. The one up at Lennoxtown, I was hearing from a particularly good source though, that it's a shame for the kids because, the kids going up to Lennoxtown and standing at the gate and waiting on the players coming out, I don't think that was the issue. I think the issue was there was a specific incident with one of the players whereby there was 2 or 3 grown men kind of no letting them pass until they signed all this gear. And that came from very, very good source. So at that point, they were like, right, we can't continue with this because when players are leaving the ground, they've got to do so. So the players, they're doing the right thing. They're rolling down the window. They're signing for the kids. So it's trying to get a balance with that. But the CSCs, certainly, we're bringing up names of CSCs here. Ian McMillan, who was with the round toe Robert Riley when he lived in Glasgow, and we've got the Livingston Jockstein. There's so many of them all over the globe, and I just think that could probably tie in not only with the current players but with the former Players Association as well, so that it could be done in such a way that they're never scratching about looking for a player or an ex-player. I'd love to see a return of that. For sure. So that's a good point. But again, the context of that Arsenal incident, you don't know what the players are getting told by the club, what they can do, what they can't do, because obviously everything's managed to the nth degree. Talking of the English game, we don't talk much about the English game on Acsom. I seen an interesting tweet the other day from our friend Fabrizio Romano around Matt O'Reilly, but it was a positive one in relation to Celtic, because it was basically saying, look, there's loads of interest in this player from English football and from the Bundesliga, but he's happy at Celtic. That was quite refreshing to read that one as well, because he's one that I was a bit concerned about. I thought to myself, his trajectory has been so steep in a short space of time that he's going to get interest from that kind of level. I think it would be too soon for him to leave us. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I'd like for him to have another crack. He's only been here, just a year and a bit now? Like, it's not that long, really. It's a year and a half ago, he was still playing in League One, so he's still got a bit to do. Obviously, his form took a downturn after the World Cup when he maybe felt like he'd missed out, or might have just been that with all the transfer stuff that was going around, he might have been a bit distracted as well. And maybe somebody's just had a word with him and going, like, you'll be going nowhere better than Burnley unless you sort this out and start doing it for Celtic. And if he does do it in the champion, he got man of the match against Real Madrid, right? So if he thinks he's going to get a move and dine out on that, every bad game he plays after that's going to lower his value. So he needs to kind of keep his focus, even if he does want to move. But it's good to hear he wants to stay. He's 22, so he's 10 years younger than Aaron Moy. If we can get he's 3 years younger than Rio Hatate. So we can still get a good deal out of him, and he can still get a good move at a good young age and a big high transfer fee. So I think we can help each other out in that sense. And yeah, hopefully he stays for at least until January next year.
Yeah, I think there is obviously that situation as a fan where, as I said before, I don't like losing quality players, but there comes a moment, there comes that perfect time for the player and in terms of the value for the club where you think, okay, it's the maximum moment. It's that bit where it's the sweet spot and they can leave. And I just don't think O'Reilly's there yet. I get the impression that Abada, however, might believe that his time is coming. And again, I don't think he's done it for us on the Champions League kind of platform, Sean. I'm now talking about Abada. I don't think he's done that. I think that there's still a lot for him to improve on before any move was to be forthcoming. However, obviously there's been rumours circulating around Abada as well. Even with that in mind, even if he was to stay, don't you think that's an area of the park we should strengthen in any case so that we do have that depth on the right-hand side?
Look, it depends how you view James Forrest and Rocco Vata when you're answering that question. Because if you take those two out of the equation, which I would hope we're not with Rocco Vata, maybe it's James Forrest's time. But if Rocco Vata's in the equation, then the only other player left there is Jota. So, because Haksabanovic and Maeda haven't proven very effective filling in on that side. So, and if Abada leaves, I don't know, do you go with Vata as number 2 in that position, or do you strengthen there? I don't know. If Jota goes, then we're absolutely up creek at that point. But I would like to see Vata in and about the team more going forwards. So if we are signing someone, oh man, I can't. It's such a hard question to answer because I want it to be Vata, but I also want us to do well in the Champions League. And last year we were completely hamstrung by injuries to McGregor and Carter Vickers that killed our Champions League campaign. What do you think? I'm going to pass it back to you. I'm going to not commit to it.
It's a real dilemma because on the one hand, you want the youth to progress. We bang on about it all the time on Acsom. You want the youth to progress. It's been great that Vata and Summers have come into the squads over the last few weeks. Vata sat on the bench against Rangers in a 3-2 game. It was great, when Jota scored, to see Vata being one of the guys in the celebrations and all that. Stephen Welsh as well, incidentally. So you've got that and you think to yourself, well, he's 18 years of age. He's had, a wee bit of a taste of first-team football. How do you progress him? Well, you don't progress him by banging him back into the B squad. You need to try and keep giving him game time. So you've got that. James Forrest, I thought was the right decision at the time to give him the extension to his contract. For a few reasons, I think that it's exceptional to have a player like him in and around the dressing room and on the training park because of the experience and the fact that, like McGregor and Ralston, he's been there since he was a young kid. He knows nothing else. And that is required when you've got so much churn with the players coming and going. You've got to make sure that the players know what Celtic's all about. And he's one of them, but you can't just be that. You've also got to play games, and that's where the concern comes in with Forrest. Abada, there's a thing, there's a feeling I've got with Abada that he will leave, if not this pre-season and maybe in January. I think he is on the cusp of leaving. And if he does, then I do feel that we're a wee bit short, because if we go to a European game and Jota is injured, for example, and we know that he has had illness and injury this season, then you're thinking, right, Vata or Forrest. So you've got a baptism, I guess, of throwing Vata in can go either way, and I've been really impressed with him, and I really want him to succeed in a Celtic jersey. And then you've got Forrest, and I think we've seen brilliant things from Jamesy Forrest, but his fitness this season has left a massive question mark over him. So I think what I'm saying is...
Are you sure about that one? Because I think if you actually, based on what I checked, before the cup final, he was in literally every single match day squad.
Has he played as many games? Jamesy?
He was allegedly fit and available for every game until the cup final, and he's not been back since then.
He scored a hat-trick this season, isn't he? Jamesy.
Was that this season?
I need to check that.
Scored one recently.
Yeah.
Celtic Park. Yeah.
Someone in the comments will be able to confirm. But if Abada leaves, I think we need to sign another right-sided player. I really do. Just to keep that strength there. And then you've got Vata. And I think to myself, right, okay, in terms of age, he's 18. When we brought in Abada, he was 19. And then there's a whole question around, okay, well, if he's not ready now, when's he going to be ready? So, but I do think that we would be looking, because I agree with you, Maeda and Haksabanovic haven't done it on the right-hand side. I think we've yet to see Haksabanovic's best position. How impressed were you, by the way, with Vata when he came on?
Yeah, he looked good. He definitely looked good. That was a brilliant cross he put in, and yeah, sometimes you can just tell like players have got that touch. Do you know what I mean? And they just need to get the other aspects of their game. Like once you've got that, you just need to figure out other things like the physicality and the tactics, and everything else will just fall in once you've got that. It does look like he could have something about him. But then we've said that about other players in the past that haven't panned out, like Liam Miller or Mikey Johnson or whoever. But I'm very hopeful, and I'm curious with this whole thing about, we won't put Dafabelt on kid strips. Are we going to let them put Rocco Vata's number on the back of their top?
See, that's a really interesting shout. I mean, we were playing a 16-year-old just last season.
Yeah.
So are you allowed to put the sponsor? Great. That's a great question, by the way. Could Ben Doak as a 16-year-old have won the Dafabet sponsorship? Very, very good question.
Yeah, but I'm more since I had the same kit number for years as Rocco Vata's got, and it wasn't for, I don't know what his reasons are, but I just thought it was hilarious.
Steve Cassidy, the semi is going to be interesting. They will be desperate for the win, as they will be stopping our treble, and they'll be trying to avoid a trophyless season for them. Yeah, there will be, and there's been situations where not necessarily in semi-finals, but I think back to 89, the Joe Miller Cup final, where he stops the treble. That obviously there's so much riding on it. Anything can happen. We know that's a cliche. It's a cup game. We know that. But I think that we have already seen them throwing everything, including the kitchen sink, at trying to stop Celtic so far. Every single game this season. They arguably have been at their best when Celtic haven't, and they've still not won the game, Sean. And I think we go in with a bit of renewed confidence that even when we've not been at our best, and I don't think we were in the 3-2 game, I don't think we were in the 2-1 game, I don't think we were, when we drew with them at Ibrox, we've still came out unscathed, relatively.
Yeah. And I'm still confused to this day as to what happened in that semi-final last year, where they came off playing 120 minutes in Europe and looked a fitter team than us. And I'm still baffled by that. I still don't understand, looking back, how that happened. I know we were kind of had a lot of injuries ourselves, and I think we had like Stephen Welsh playing at fullback by the end of the game, and whoever Scales at left back, maybe, I can't remember. So we were struggling with injuries ourselves, but it still baffles me now that how after them playing away for 120 minutes in Europe, they dominated us in terms of fitness in the late stages of that game. So I'd be thinking and hoping that revenge is a factor. But I'm also hoping that we get this kind of... One thing that Brendan Rodgers, I know we don't like to talk about him too much these days, one thing that he was really good at was getting players to just not get overawed by an occasion. They would just play the football and not be he would get their heads in the right space for a big game. Whereas Postecoglou almost seems to lean into the kind of sense of occasion thing and kind of uses it as an out for players. Like if we play a game against, remember he went mental, was it Rafe Rovers, and he started balling the players out in the first half, and so he doesn't let them away with it in that game. But then after any Sevco game, he'll always come out and say, they did well considering the occasion, and it's always frantic in these games. He will give them that out in these games. So and I'm not. It's not a criticism. Like I think maybe he's just saying, look, I can't control this, but I would be curious to know how Brendan Rodgers controlled that, or maybe he didn't. Maybe it was just because Sevco were gash back then, and it was. Do you know what I mean? Like he didn't really need to control it.
No, you're right. I think with regards to the way that, again, going back to one of the comments about the culture and the way that Ange deals with the media and the way that he deals with the players as well, has been, for me, the absolute sea change that we needed when he came in. The semi-final was going to be a battle, apparently, according to 1888 CFC. If it does become a battle, I think that suits them a wee bit more than it suits us, but we'll see how that transpires. We'll keep homegrown for the equation. We had a good chat about that Drew Hallow LP just the other day, and I think that's why Forrest will probably stay in the build. Mickey Johnson might come back in, and Stephen Welsh might not be sold. Michael 89 doesn't think I got the squad number reference. I did get it, actually. Yeah, I did. I just don't know where you want me to take that, Michael, to be honest, when it comes to Rocco Battle having the number 69 on his back. And Thomas Dunn, hail from Early Beach. Abada was only in the door. This is true. When he said in an interview he would love to play for Liverpool, I remember he said that, proper faux pas just in the door. Nowhere near Premier League quality. Ajax can have him take the money. I think what you'll find, though, is Abada will be coming up on so many radars at this moment in time, because if you consider what he's done in the last 2 years, his age, his numbers, they're astonishing. He will be a much sought after player. I think the other one that I remember coming away with something like that about wanting to go and play in England was Mo Bangura. Remember him? Mo Bangura.
Yeah. Where we signed the wrong one.
We definitely, to be honest with you, it's the one thing that, is a big question mark about Larsson, because remember the headline was, it's been recommended by Henrik Larsson, and I love Henrik, but that was definitely a faux pas if he was the guy that recommended them. Now, there was a story again during the week, and I thought to myself, wow, seriously? Mixed up referees. I thought, yeah, and in theory, sounds brilliant, Sean. But it's like giving VAR to our referees. You can give them a great concept. You can give them a great bit of kit. It's not going to improve what they do. It's not going to improve them as referees, is it? There's no point in keeping giving them new kit.
Well, they're already mic'd up, but I guess the story is that what they say will then be broadcast, which to me more like rugby or NFL or AFL or pretty much any other professional sport. That's just a normal thing, but not in football, not in association football. Referees get to go away and have a think about it and come up with their story after the game. So, throw back to Doogie. Yeah, look, they already do have mics. They already communicate with each other, and I think public transparency would be a good thing. When I'm doing refereeing, I make an effort to tell players why I made that decision, even if it's like kind of slowing me down. Like at the weekend there, some guy, there's that ball hits player's hand in the box, and I have to look, if it comes off his body and then hits his hand, it's not a penalty. They changed the rule 2 years ago, and the guy's looking at me like, they changed that rule? And I'm like, yeah, like there's some people, like players literally don't know the rules, so you have to kind of update them on the hop. So I think transparency would be a good thing. Even if they're wrong, at least they're transparent about it. Like, and because I'll be doing it as well. I'll make a decision and I'll go, I saw that as your hand was away from the body and the ball hit your hand, and the guy will be like, oh no, it hit my elbow, and I'll be like, well, do you know what I mean? Like, and it's fine. I'm taking the feedback. I'm not changing my decision. It's okay to be wrong. Transparency is good. We can all learn from it. Mm-hmm, right? Mm-hmm.
No, you're right. You're right. And I think though that with regards to it becoming kind of like a public, becoming public with what's getting said, my big, future aspirations for Scottish football when it comes to refereeing is professional refs. You're a referee. Would it help? Is that an obvious thing? It definitely should be introduced in this country. Do you think that would make all the difference, Sean?
I don't think it would benefit referees, no. I think it would only be of benefit for the public perception of referees, which might help them in the sense that people might get off their back. Like I said, even if you're wrong, if you just explain why you gave the decision, then people will be like, all right, okay, I see. I don't agree with you, but I see what you're saying here. Do you know what I mean? I think that's what I think. Mm-hmm. I think it would help get people off their back. I don't think it would actually make any difference to them. I think what they need to do to be better is to be full-time, where they sit down in a room, they look at 50 examples each day of decisions. They review them, they debate it, they talk about, why, where, what, how, and assess it, and they get better that way, rather than going to school during the day, training Sevco youth players, and then going refereeing a Sevco game at the weekend with no real reflection. Because what are they doing during the week after work? They're doing a few hours of training. When do they actually have time to take feedback properly? 2 hours?
Exactly. Yeah. And if it was a full-time gig, obviously you're going to be analysing, you're going to be getting that feedback on a constant basis. Big shout out to the Govan Emerald CSC, that's John McCauley. And also Peter McGlone reminds us that Jamesy did score a hat-trick this season. It was against Hibs, 6-1 game at home.
Right.
And that was one of the goals was his 100th in a Celtic jersey as well. So I'm always interested to hear your thoughts on the referees, because I know you've got that experience as well. So thanks for sharing it with us. We're 700 strong on a live stream. Thanks everybody for getting involved. And if you haven't done so already, give us a big thumbs up. I asked for it yesterday. We got about 600 thumbs up, which was phenomenal on the video. Now, just the other day, I didn't get a chance to say this, just yesterday was the anniversary of Tommy Burns' first ever game in a Celtic jersey, 1975. We're talking about a culture. We're talking about people being at the club who are able to pass on the baton of what Celtic is, what it means to the supporters. And I think if I think of one man who I would use as an example, it would be Tommy Burns. As we move into 20, 30 years of modern football, though, Sean, a lot of football clubs, they don't really see that as being important. As a Celtic fan, I think we will always see that as being important. Having a fabric of the club in there, homegrown players, 3 or 4 in every side, I think that's key to anything Celtic does, regardless of how much change we see in the modern game.
Definitely, and it's the Man United. I can't remember. Could you tell me? Do you remember what year it is? They're tracking back, but they keep account of how many years they've had a homegrown player in the matchday squad every game since whatever it is, 1992 or 1980 something. So they are very proud of that. The team that I support here, Fremantle Dockers, the Aussie Rules team, they have this very proud stat where they've played, like, in their whole history, they've only played 1 game without an Aboriginal player in the team. So, like, these, think about what's the Spanish team, Athletic Bilbao, who won't play players that are outside the Catalan, not Basque, outside the Basque region. So it is a very, very strong identity for many teams. And Celtic, obviously, we have the thing with the Lisbon Lions being our kind of root of pride around homegrown talent, and it would be great if we could move back to that, but also we demand success. So it's a double-edged sword there, and I think the thing that's killing us at the moment is this. I think the homegrown Champions League rule is what's killing us, because it's the reason why these big teams are poaching the best talent at young age, because they can't sign them later. They have to have them early to make them eligible.
It's a great point, and we have lost so many of them. There's going to be a future Acsom show, Sean, where we're talking about a great Celtic 11 we might have had if we were able to keep a hold of all these young talented players. There's definitely over a dozen already who have flown the nest. This week, Joe Hart celebrated his 36th birthday. Mikey Johnson celebrated his 24th. They're 2 players that are constantly spoken about on here in relation to their futures at Celtic. Joe Hart, do we need a backup goalkeeper, Sean? And Mikey Johnson, does he come back into the fold in the summer?
I like Ben Siegrist. I don't know what's happening. I know he's allegedly injured, but I like him. I'd actually be thinking more replacement for Joe Hart, to be honest. The chat about, I know it's Gunn. I've only ever seen him play for Scotland in those 2 games, and he looked good. And he would tick a box in terms of homegrown players, I believe. I might be wrong on that one. But yeah, I'd be fine with Joe Hart for another year, but also I'd be looking for a new number 1 that's a bit younger. Yeah, and the homegrown thing it always comes back to that. And we're now, is that maybe a sign of status that we now care about that? Like, it's in the past we didn't care, and it's now, we now consider ourselves a Champions League team, and we now have to start thinking about this. We're now at that level of the Man Cities. I think the story I heard last week was Man City offered Micah Richards 20,000 a week, and then when the homegrown player rule came in, they offered him 100,000 a week, and he signed it. Obviously,
5-year deal. 5-year
Yeah.
deal. Crazy. But the good thing for me is, obviously, it's no coincidence that all of a sudden over the last couple of years we have made inroads into getting the Celtic B team into the pyramid system. And obviously, there's going to be a period where we're jumping through hoops whereby it's not going to be ideal. There's no promotion, etc. But eventually that will have to happen so that we do have that succession of young talent coming through. In the past, you sometimes wondered when you looked at the real lack of homegrown talent coming through and playing over 100 games for Celtic, for example, Sean. If you go right back to when Lennoxtown was opened, there's a real debate to be had around whether or not that's been a success. It's something that I think we probably will discuss in the future. But now the onus, it's been ramped up a bit. Let's get the young guys playing in a pyramid system again, and it was different with the reserve league, and obviously that's never ever going to come back. The game's moved on from that. It's never going to be implemented again. But if we do have, like in other successful nations, a B team in the pyramid system that can get promoted as far as the league underneath the top division, then I think that is key to the development of our youth players as well. It would be phenomenal at some point to see a goalkeeper coming through the ranks and play 100 games for Celtic, a striker coming. Who was the last striker that came through and played 100 games for Celtic? It's not often enough that we see it. Martin Bickett, Melbourne, Jockstein, CSC, big shout out to you as well. And as I say, keep them coming because it's an absolute pleasure to see where you're watching the show from. We have 38 tickets left for our gig next week with Big John Hartson. It's on Saturday night at Barras Art Design. If you buy a ticket, you get put into a prize draw to win a signed and framed Joe Hart jersey. And the ticket link is indeed underneath this video. 38 tickets to go. It looks as though it will sell out. Thanks everybody who's already bought your ticket. And if you want to come along and meet some of the Acsom team and indeed John Hartson, then please get along. These venues, these events have been massively enjoyable over the last few months, and we're going to keep them coming as well. Because obviously, you've got Acsom on your screen, but we can get a group of Celtic fans together and have a right good night and a brilliant venue as well. So John Hartson, it was confirmed 109 goals he scored for Celtic. One of very few. The last one that hit the 100 barrier was indeed Jamesy Forrest, who we've already spoken to. Thanks everybody for getting involved. If you haven't done so already, 700 strong in the live stream. Sorry to cut you all off, but we have ran for an hour. Give us a big thumbs up on the YouTube channel. If you haven't done so already, subscribe, and then you can be part of the comments section as well. All that's left for me to say, Sean Connolly from Celtic Down Under, thanks for joining me on A Celtic State of Mind.